Hey, what's up guys? Everything Apple Pro here. Exciting times. Just a few days away from WWDC, we have some news about the new foldable iPhones. iPhone OS 14 is what we're going to be seeing here in just a few days. New naming structure, 14 years of refinement, and we've got some iPhone 12 news, both good and bad. All right, let's jump into that. So I have one iPhone left that hasn't been given away, and details on that will be down below in the description. Quick shipping update for those that have ordered the Rebel series cases. So a few hundred tracking numbers did go out last night. More will follow this weekend and all of next week. So thank you for your patience, and let me know what you guys think about our Rebel Series Gen 2 closed case. So the mythical Jon Prosser has shared the first ever public details of Apple's foldable phone project. Now, there have been various patents going back to 2016, some even further, which Apple could use for this, but no actual design direction. Now, our concept we're showing you is based on the Galaxy Z Flip. Take this with a grain of salt. It's just what we can go off of to design this. Then there's a separate version by Concept Creator, which is actually using the design details Jon Prosser gave us, which is that of an iPhone 11 rounded edge design. And the front will have a notch, or more like a chin, for all of the Face ID components, so assuming it'll have 3 displays. He says Apple's foldable will not look like 2 iPhones stuck together, which is exactly what I'm showing you, and we'll update the design as we learn more. But yes, Apple is working on a foldable, and there are numerous patents regarding hinges, foldable battery technology, foldable display technology, using many different methods that Apple could be employing for this device. Now, we didn't provide a time frame. We know that Apple's working on this and has been for quite some time. There's really no major demand for this device just yet. Samsung has carved out a niche with their Galaxy Fold and Z Flip lineup, and they'll be further expanding on it, but Apple, in its Apple fashion, will arrive on the scene late, but maybe do things better here. Okay, so moving on to iPhone 12 stuff. Now, there are new CADs circulating now, which are going out to case manufacturers and are being shared. Many Twitter leakers have access to them, and there's conflicting information going around right now regarding the design features of the iPhone 12. Supposedly, the iPhone 12 lineup will not be as impressive as the leaks have suggested, according to one Twitter leaker. And actually examining these CADs, we can tell that they're definitely recent. They're not the old December ones from 2019, which had the smart connector, which, by the way, is supposedly not even a smart connector. Duan Rui, Twitter leaker, has shared that it's a 5G millimeter wave antenna opening. Unclear how it'll be finished or if it'll be visible on the surface. I assume it'll be painted the same color as the antenna bands on the iPad Pro. Now, these molds paint a completely different picture than leaks suggested. In particular, with the camera layout, it's not using the square camera layout. It's the original one from the 11 Pro Max, but slightly larger and different spacing. So the camera, I believe, is wrong here, and that doesn't matter at all for a case manufacturer. And a different Twitter leaker is sharing these molds in metal with glass planted on top of them. As you can see, companies are already developing glass screen protectors, and taking a look at that notch, the earpiece is not up against the border like we saw in the schematics Jon Prosser shared. Jon Prosser's explanation is that case manufacturers don't need that much information. These are real CADs, they're just old and unfinished and will be updated. So we'll see. I certainly hope so. I do not want to go another year with the old notch. And by the way, this is a 5.4-inch model that I printed. I did not expect it to be this tiny. This is next to an iPhone 5. It's slightly smaller than the new SE. Crazy. It's crazy how small the footprint is on this phone. I certainly didn't realize it until I printed it and held it in my hands. And just for a point of reference, when the iPhone 11 lineup CADs leaked sometime around this time last year, they were actually very close to the real deal. Apple logo in the center and all, nobody caught that. So I'm not saying that these CADs are to be trusted, but they certainly hold more information than you'd expect them to. And actually, taking a closer look at the 2020 lineup, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which Duan Rui, Twitter leaker, is saying will be the only iPhone to have a LiDAR sensor this year, not the 6.1-inch 12 Pro. So I certainly hope that's wrong too. If Apple were to keep the same camera orientation, we assume the LiDAR would be the iPad Pro size. This is to scale and planted somewhere in there next to that microphone. Like I said, I hope that's wrong, just speculation. And there's a separate leak here of the schematic view of the iPhone 12 Pro 6.1-inch CAD. No new information, but it does show that notch and better detail. I really hope that Apple gets rid of that. I hope Jon Prosser is right, but if Apple were to shrink the notch this year, we'd be seeing a shrunken notch for the next 3 years, but we're already hearing rumors about Apple removing it in 2021, at least on one device. And a small detail on iPhone 12 Pro design, which Max Weinbach is providing, is that they've elongated the camera shape slightly. It's a very slight rectangle now instead of a square. This is due to camera structuring on the inside. Some good news regarding 120 Hz. Max Weinbach is reporting that it's passed a second engineering test and is still good for launch. Meanwhile, Apple rumors leaks might be doubting this feature, and I'll be reporting more as we learn, but so far so good. Thank goodness. And Digitimes is reporting that Apple is now looking to include the X60 Qualcomm modem in this year's iPhones, not next year as originally planned. These are more advanced than the originally intended X55 modems with a 5nm process, and they can aggregate both millimeter wave and sub 6 GHz at the same time to get you the best speeds. And once again being reported, this year's iPhones will arrive without wired earpods in the box. According to Wedbush analyst Dan Ives, he's claiming that Apple is removing this feature. They'll sell more AirPods with it, and again, from a separate leak, Apple may reintroduce a budget version of AirPods to include with future version of the iPhone. This Wedbush analyst also believes that the iPhone 12, despite the setbacks, is still on track to launch in early October. Jon Prosser has also shared more details regarding AirPower, this C68 prototype, which Apple engineers have been testing at home. He's saying they finally got the Apple Watch function working and has provided some pictures, which Fudge has disputed, Twitter leaker saying that those were made by him. Despite this, Jon Prosser is saying the information is valid. And a separate Twitter leaker has found evidence in iOS 14 of a C26 or AirPower Mini wireless charger. This is something that was rumored by several different sources. Apple is working on a smaller wireless charger, and we might finally see it at WWDC. Mark Gurman has also published a report on Apple's AR and VR future, further detailing the two devices, Apple glasses and the VR gaming headset. Apparently, Johnny Ive was unhappy with having a separate hub, which the gaming headset had to connect to, and Apple engineers ended up settling on a less powerful device, but being independent from a separate hub. And this gaming headset is going to have high-resolution displays, a cinematic speaker experience, and the main input method will be Siri. No details yet on design other than it'll look somewhat like the HTC system, which is already on market. And Mark Gurman says we'll get our first look at this in 2021, with Apple Glass being pushed to 2023, just based on the complexity of that system. So VR first and then an AR headset. Now, what new hardware might we expect at WWDC? A new iMac, the ARM MacBook, AirPods Studio, AirTags, HomePod Mini, and possibly an Apple TV 4K. And a separate Twitter leaker warns us that we might see substantial delays to software and hardware to items announced at WWDC. Now, iOS 14 may not happen. It'll be called iPhone OS 14, according to Jon Prosser, which goes back to the roots. iOS was only named iOS on iOS 4 before it was iPhone OS. And now that Apple has multiple versions of its software for different devices, it only makes sense for Apple to use this naming once again. I certainly am in opposition of Apple renaming iPhone to Apple Phone. Hopefully that doesn't happen, mysterious online leaker. I've never seen this many new leakers, new leak sources cropping up in such short a time. Now there's a new one sharing many iOS 14 details, in particular sharing AirTag sound effects with us. I mean, sounds about right. This Twitter leaker is also claiming we might get iPod OS separate from iPhone OS. It would make sense if that one is getting renamed. He also claims iPhone OS 14 might be released on September 30th. There will be new dark mode control center toggles, which will switch depending on your day-night orientation, and also that we might get a new mute switch toggle for the control center on an iPhone. This leaker claims to have found evidence pointing to the feature that Apple is bringing Sidecar to a future version of iOS 14, possibly not the initial version. Also has found mention of the iPhone 12 and the Apple A14 chip directly in iOS 14. I mean, who knew? And yes, iOS is getting a dedicated sleep mode. So this is separate from bedtime mode. This is an actual switch in your control center, which Fudge details will put your phone into a completely different mode, different than Do Not Disturb and more focused on sleep mode, especially since the Apple Watch Series 6 is gaining this sleep mode feature, or so we hear. Along with a host of many different icons, Gobi, Apple's AR-based app they're bringing to iOS 14 has been shown, at least the icon for it. and some of the functionality. This is all developerware. You're really never going to see this stuff on the final build, but still interesting to see behind the scenes. And buried in the privacy policy of the iOS 13.5.1 release, the car key has been detailed. No new information other than the fact that it might arrive sooner than we think, possibly with 13.6 or iOS 14 as originally rumored. Really excited for that feature, especially if it comes with Tesla integration. All right guys, thanks for watching. See you on June 22nd. It's going to be a crazy week. So excited. Peace.